I'm doing the shift gaiter on the Esprit. So I cut 4 pieces. Basically want to make the boot into 4 equal pieces. So I made some templates out of paper, and then I taped all 4 of them together. So believe it or not, that's my template. And transferred the dimensions onto this inner line here, and it's this outer line that I'll actually cut on the material, and so that when you're sewing 2 pieces together, you fold these 2 pieces together and you sew it, and that's what a blind stitch is. And then you sew the front for the French seam. So cut this template out, and then I can put it on my material and start cutting my material to that size. All right, template's cut out. So now I'll transfer these dimensions to individual scrap pieces of leather that I have kicking around, and see how it fits. Top seam isn't tight enough. It's not terribly bad, but wouldn't want it any looser, so torqued it down just a hair. All right, there's the shift gaiter, the French seams. What's left to do is this top has been folded over, and it's going to get a seam, one seam running along here to give it a nice finish appearance, as well as hold down the fold. And then it's sewing these 2 last sides together via a blind stitch, and then I can turn it inside out, and it's pretty close to done. These marks you see, that's just chalk that comes off. It hasn't been perfect so far, but I'll see if the finished product is good enough to use. If not, I have a real good understanding of how to sew it next time, but I'm happy with a lot of the seams. So we'll see how this comes out. These lines were done differently and they were a little harder, but I'll see if I can hide some of the unevenness when I bring it together and sew it. So this is my first attempt at sewing a shift gaiter, and I thought about keeping it, but I don't think I'm going to. I don't think it's quite 100% where I want it to be. The shift gaiter and the stick shift and the center console, that's I mean, the first thing you open the car door, and that's what you see is your eye gravitates toward that stick shift, you know, manual. So I really want it to look good, and this came out really good. This French seam came out really good. This one came out really good, and I screwed up the last one. It's too narrow. I was thinking about pulling the thread out and restitching it, and I said that's not worth it. Plus, on top of it, this center right there is uneven, so I'm gonna redo it, which is too bad because I was really kind of psyched about this. So I've restarted. Again, I took my template, cut my pieces of leather, and then on the back of them marked where I'm going to sew. So the blind stitch will come along these blue lines, joining them together. They'll get stitched down here, and then when you open it up, the stitch is hidden by the fold. I know where I messed up, and I'm not going to make that mistake the second time around because I'm tired of making mistakes. All right, I really took my time, and you can see my stitch is right on the blue line, so I'm happy with that. That came out good. Yeah, I should have probably stitched a little further at the top, but that's all right. Gets folded over. French seam time. See if I can do this without screwing it up. I screwed it up already. Damn it. My stitch skipped a hole, which, damn it. I love doing things 3 and 4 times. So I have to take this line out. It's bad. And when I sew again, I have to try to basically put the first stitch in the same exact hole so that I'm reusing the holes and not creating new ones. This material is really tight, so I wouldn't, I'm not too worried about little holes showing. Well, those are pretty obvious though. All right, well, let's get this stitch out. All right, you can see those little holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm going to resew this, and when I do the very first needle stitch, I'm going to line up with that hole so that it populates the same holes again. It doesn't create new ones. Just figure out why it did that to begin with. And I screwed up. So I took it all apart. My stitch, I didn't, on the back, you're supposed to bend this excess material back, and then your French seam runs through that. One, it creates it, makes it structurally stronger, but 2, it also pulls this material back so it's easier to fold and things like that. I didn't do that, and you can kind of get away with that because afterwards I can just folded on top like that. So I had a seam in here, and it should have been through here, but it wasn't. So I could have, after the fact, glued this over, and it would have given me, it would have worked. You'd never know it. It's just the problem with that is when you only go through one layer, as opposed to if you fold this over and you're going through 2 layers, is that the tension on your stitch is different because you're only going through 1 layer. And as a result, the front, the top thread pulls the bobbin thread through, and what you see are a line for the stitch and then a dot, a line for a stitch and a dot, and that dot is the bottom thread poking through. So yeah, can't have that. Just means I get to template another one of these and attach it on here. Oh man, I'm not enjoying doing things this many times. So I'm going on my 3rd attempt here. Actually, 3.5 technically. My first one came out the best so far. It just bothers me that the distance between these 2 French seams is only about 3/4 of what the other ones are. Also, although it's minimal, I'm not happy with, it's actually not that bad now that I look at it, but this stitch is comes down a little bit, so I just want to redo it over. And I thought, wow, this one came really close to being good. So I redo it, I shouldn't have a problem. Well, I've had nothing but problems. My 2nd attempt, I just wasn't thinking. Yeah, with this one, so forget all this. I wasn't thinking, and I stapled the back side of one to the front side of the other, and then stitched it, which was wrong, because you should never see this stitch. That's the blind stitch. I stitched it on the wrong side. I should have flipped this over. Whatever, started over, cut some new pieces, and immediately made some mistakes. I ended up stitching the whole thing closed using the wrong stitch length. I took that seam out and said, well, no one will notice it because it'll be so small. What I started doing was I started doing the French seam without rolling these backs over. So this first one, the thread isn't right, it's pulling through. But you could see the effect of the glue. See how it's sitting, it's not sitting flat, and you can see it's all indented. That's the glue, that's too much glue. So I'm going to not use glue on this next one. For the next one, I've already cut the pieces. I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna stop making stupid mistakes. So I'm gonna check myself before I sew anything or before I glue anything. I'm going to take a break and think about what it is I'm doing, because I'm making silly mistakes at this point, and I'm tired of redoing my work. So when I completed this, I was pretty happy with it, with the exception of I was having a hard time sewing this a seam right here. Still, I was going to work with it, but you know, my calculations were way off, because when this would have been stitched up roughly like that, the hole was just way too big. It should fit much tighter. So I redid my measurements. Well, first of all, I pulled this out of the Lotus. I need new bushing, which has been ordered. But this opening on the top should really be kind of tight around here. And if you make it tight there, if you were to seal this up or stitch it, if you were to make it tight there, you'd have to stitch it that tight, like that, which would look good, but then you'd have the issue of how would you get it on there, because this is a wider point than that is right there. So I recalculated, and I made I cut 4 new panels, and these panels are significantly, probably less, just under half the size of these. So where before I had a total of a few inches, the hole is a few inches in circumference, the new one is a total of just under 3 inches in circumference. So it should be a much tighter fit, and I intend on leaving the top a little. When it folds over, I have a paracord here somewhere. that I'm going to use to tie it so that it should fit nice and tight on here, and yet the bottom will be the same width. So hopefully this is the last time I sew it. Here's my paracord. So this is what I'll use to drawstring the top. I'll cut this, and so if this were the one that I was keeping, it would go underneath the seam, and then it would tie over here, and that would draw it tight. So anyways, that's what I'm trying to do. All right, this is attempt number 6. And I was really hoping it would be the last one. This is what's supposed to happen here is you hand stitch this closed. I added a cinch string to it, and I had black coming, so I was going to pull the black through and use it to tie the back so it would cinch nice and tight right there, just like that. And the idea is when you uncinched it, it would be open enough to be able to slip it over this metal housing right here. Yet it's got way too much room. It's way too big at the top. Cinched down, you could see the space in there. There's quite a big gap, and I want it to be tight like that. And I had taken measurements to make sure it would be tight this time around, but what I didn't take into account is when you fold, let's see, when you fold the material down here and then you stitch it here to create this nice sort of rounded top, you're moving down further, and as it shapes out, you're increasing the size of the hole. So in other words, when I cut my template, I cut it for the very top, for these pieces that are folded over when they were sticking up, to fit tightly around here, and that was my mistake, because I have to figure the top is throwaway because it gets folded over, and then figure an inch down, size it so that each one of these panels, when they come together and combined, 1 inch down is tight around here. That's the way I should have done it. So yeah, back to the drawing board. And I'm disappointed too, because you know, I've done it 6 times, but it's really gonna look good when it's done. But I mean, I could live with this. It could work like that, but to me that's too loose. I want it a little tighter than that. I've sewn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 8, no 7, at least 7 shift gaiters. This was more of an experiment that didn't pan out. Other than the last one I did, the very first one I did came out the best. I have a new shift bushing. This one looks pretty worn, and it was also frozen on there. You weren't able to activate it, and I popped it off, freed it up, and I ordered another one. I've got it around here somewhere, but yeah, getting close. I know a lot of people complain about these style shifts. I kind of like it. I don't know, there's something about it. I think it'll look good with the black gaiter on it. I need something for the top, the shift diagram, or just something to go there, because it looks a little. I tried to take it off, and it does not come off easy. And so at that point, I just gave up. But if I could get it off, I'd consider sewing my own with the gray stitching to match everything else. I think that would look really sharp. All right. So next up is to template 4 more pieces of this material. I'm getting tired of this shift gaiter project. I'm going to be happy when it's, I'll be very happy when this is done. So there's my my shift gaiter. I'm done. This was attempt number 9. I'm not doing it again. Is it perfect? No. Not crazy with some of the detail in here, but it's good enough at this point. Again, this was attempt number 9, and it's no one portion of doing this is very difficult at all. Everything is relatively straightforward. It's just that there are so many steps, and you can't, even though they're relatively straightforward, you can't make any mistakes, or you have to start over. And I got to a number of them. I would say the majority of them, I got more than halfway through before I did something and had to scrap them. This one, I took my time, went really slow, made notes, and just sort of followed them. This is composed of 4 pieces, 4 individual pieces that I cut from a paper template, trial and error, getting the right size, and then they're sewn together with a blind stitch. And then for a decorative stitch, as well as adding additional strength, you do these what's called French seams, which is just running the sewing machine up and down each of these hidden seams or blind stitches. And the problem I had with a number of my other attempts was when I finished it, and this top opening was too big. It was too big to fit on this tightly. This is the shift from the car, and that's where this top is supposed to fit tightly right in that groove. The problem with that is, even if you take this handle off, you have this large housing, and if you come from the bottom, you have this large housing. So this top opening has to be at least as wide as either this or this in order to slip it on. And the ones I made, it was plenty big enough to do that, but then the top was really loose. The top that wrapped around here was really, really open and loose, and I didn't like that. So ultimately what I ended up doing was stitching it 85% of the way up, and then the rest I just folded over and glued. That's coming apart, I gotta stitch that. I just folded over, and then I used these eyelets here in order to allow me to tie this up and cinch it up. So I wire wheeled this ring. This is what the gaiter boot gets wrapped around, and you can see the 4 studs on it, which then fit in there. I wire wheeled it. It had rust on it, and then I put some clear coat on it just to prevent it from rusting in the future. But honestly, I mean, it probably shouldn't rust if you know, don't leave your car open to the elements for a year. It should be fine, I would think. The shifter was also rusty, and the reverse bushing that goes on here was frozen and cracked and chewed down. So I ordered a new one from California, so the new shift bushing will go on. And here's the rubber boot. I guess it has to be trimmed. That sits under this. So all shiny and new. This got wire wheeled up, cleaned, as I said. This got spray painted black just to protect it from moisture. I still have not been able to get this shift knob off. I actually like this shift knob. I know a lot of people complain about it. So what I might do, if I can get it off successfully, and I'm not sure that I can, but if I can get it off successfully, I might try to sew a cover over it with French seams on it. You know, I think that stitching would look nice up here. Yeah, so that's a possibility. To shift these cars into reverse, you have to pull up like this. This is nice and smooth, very easy to do. Again, it wasn't doing that before. I'm going to now mount the gaiter that I sewn to this O-ring. The challenge I'm going to have with attaching this to this is it's going to get positioned. These four seams are going to get positioned right where the studs are. And the problem with that is it means I have to cut. It means I have to pop a hole through this seam here, 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 and here, and fold it over, and the rest gets glued, and everybody's happy. The problem with that is if you cut a seam, you cut the ends of the threads, and they can unravel. So I think the trick is to punch my hole through it and then immediately pour super glue on it to lock down the threads. So, should work. That's what I was told to do. I guess we'll find out. Okay, finally done with the shift boot. It's not perfect, but it's good enough at this point. You've got a seam. This edge right here is peeling away, so I have to put a stitch through that to hold it. Overall, it came out pretty good. I'm satisfied with it. This was not a fun project. I did not enjoy any aspect of this. Again, I had gone through, that's my pile of failed shift boots right there. There's at least 7 or 8 of them because this was my 9th attempt. I finally got it right, at least close enough to being right as a keeper. So yeah, and it is secured to the underside with 4 nuts and 4 washers that holds it in place. So I did the lace up section to allow me to untie it and open it so that I could fit the shift mechanism through it, and then cinch it up tight right on this collar. It won't fit on now. This is the old reverse bushing. Here's the new one. This one was frozen in place. This would not actuate. So I just threw some penetrating oil in there, freed it up, sanded this down, painted it, so it's as good as new. And I got this guy, the rubber boot that goes on the chassis, and then this feeds through it. So yeah, pretty happy. There it is. One custom-made Lotus Esprit shift gaiter. Project done. Okay, so on to costs. Coming in, I was at $5,602.09. The work I did on the shift gaiter. So what I did for the leather to calculate the price is I took the 4 individual pieces that get sewn together, measured them, and they came out to a 24-inch by 8-inch area for 192 square inches times the $0.02979 per square inch is a total of $5.72 per gaiter. I sewed 9 of them, but the first 3 were utilizing scrap material that had already been taken into account in a previous project. So basically, it's the 572 times 6 gaiters for a total of $34.32, bringing my total interior work up to $199.37. And then I changed the engine session to engine chassis, and that's going to be a catch-all for anything that's not interior, miscellaneous, or body work. But the shift bushing and neoprene gaiter were a total of $125.25. So yeah, those 2 small items, $120.25, bringing my total engine chassis work up to $806.45 and a project total to $5,756.66. Thanks for following along.